Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument and let the beauty that we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. That's a poem by the Persian poet Rumi. I really liked the whistling part. When I was growing up, I had a friend named Beth Garner. We were really close in high school, and she was the baby in the family. Her older brothers and sisters had already moved out, and so her mother was a little bit older than some of the other mothers. And her mother used to be a professional whistler on the radio back in the day. So every now and then she would treat us to a little song. So, I know, right? It's like you're whistling, you got to smile, and then it kind of messes up the whistling. Yeah, so that was great. That was great. Thank you. So the Persian poet Rumi, I am not even going to try to pronounce any of his names. He's got all of these different names that are really long, like Jalaluddin, Medlevi, Rumi. He's probably the most well-known poet in America, believe it or not. In the 70s, he was the most translated poet from another language into English. So how many has ever heard of Rumi before? Like everybody has heard of Rumi pretty much. So he's got refrigerator magnets and couch pillows. He's a very famous guy, but he lived in the 13th century, and his father was a very prominent, well-known, scholarly guy that ran a school. So Sufis are the mystical arm of the Islamic faith. So they study the Quran. Just like his father, Rumi was a jurist. How many knows what a jurist is? It's someone who studies the law. It's like where we get the word jury from. A jurist is someone who's an expert in the law. And Rumi was a scholar. He was a teacher. His father died young, so Rumi took over the school. So training other people to be religious scholars and leaders. But Rumi was also a poet and a mystic. So he met this guy one day. Now, what you're going to hear this morning is the story of Rumi according to Reverend Dale. Okay? So this is what I think about Rumi. Even when you read biographical books about Rumi, the authors will tell you, well, some of this might be made up. It's kind of like Jesus, right? We don't have a whole lot of historical information, but we do have a whole lot of stories that we tell about prominent figures in religion and spirituality. So just like Jesus, there's a lot of stories that have been made up about Rumi. I'm going to tell you my version, but if you're interested, go check it out for yourself. There's a number of amazing books that have been translated, and one of my favorite translators is Coleman Barks. I'll talk about him in a moment. But when Rumi met Shams Tabrizi, or he was from a place called Tabrizi, I think, or Tabriz, because even the name Rumi is based on a place where Rumi is from. So Shams, to me, is kind of like a John the Baptist figure. He's kind of wild and crazy, like John the Baptist he was always dirty, and he ate bugs, and he lived out in the desert, right? So I kind of get this same picture when I think about Shams. he would get run out of town in different places because he had these crazy ideas about God, and he would go around spouting them off to everybody, and they would run him out of town. So there's a number of different stories about when Shams and Rumi met. But one thing for sure is that it changed Rumi's life. And he says in one of his poems that Shams was the key that unlocked his heart and mind. You know, there's one story that when Shams and Rumi met, that Rumi was on a horse, and he locked eyes with Shams, and it was such a profound moment that he fell off his horse. So there's another story that Rumi is sitting by a fountain or a pond or something, and he's studying his books. And Shams comes up and starts talking to him. They never met before. And Shams says, "What are you doing?" Rumi says, "Well, you wouldn't understand." And the metaphysical meaning behind this is that there is some knowledge that is hidden from the unlearned. Okay? So then Shams takes all of Rumi's books and he throws them in the water. Says, "What you're looking for isn't in the book." And so Rumi runs over and rescues his books from the water, and they're all dry. And he's like, "What is this? What's going on?" And Shams says, "Well, you wouldn't understand. Because there's some wisdom that is hidden from the learned." I think I said that correctly. Yeah. So there's a story to ponder in your meditation, to think about that sometime. So then they were inseparable for a while. They would lock themselves away. Now, Rumi was married twice. He had children. He had grown sons. And they did not like the relationship between Rumi and Shams. They would go off together and lock themselves in a room and spend all day. Nobody really knows what they were doing when they were together because they were solitary. But one thing for sure, Rumi starts writing all this poetry. And it's love poetry to Shams. And it's beyond a romantic relationship. Shams showed Rumi the beloved. Okay? So he talks a lot in his poetry about the lover and the beloved. So this is the mystic relationship that we have when we're so totally in love with God that this is all we desire. And then God reveals itself to us. In the Indian tradition, they call this bhakti yoga, the path of devotion. So that you're so in love with God that that's all you want, and the union with the divine is your primary goal in life. And so Rumi is saying in his poetry, the way I understand it, is that Shams showed Rumi that beloved presence when they looked in each other's eyes. Now, this is a wonderful practice that you can do, and I'm not going to ask you to do it this morning because I don't want to ambush anybody. We're not in a workshop. But one thing that you can do with folks that you love is really gaze into their eyes and see if you can see God in them. Can you see the beloved in your beloved? Can you see yourself in your beloved, or in your friend, or in the person at the grocery store? I don't know. I've tried this with people I don't know before, and they're like, "Why are you looking at me that way?" So be careful with your superpowers, right? But it's a wonderful practice to be with somebody and to really gaze into their eyes without even saying anything. To just be present with a person. Because it's like the one thing that humans want the most is to be seen. You know, someone who's living on the street, I've heard many people who are unhomed say they feel invisible. I saw a guy on Broughton Street one day screaming, "I'm here. Everyone's walking by me like you don't even see me." Like we want to be seen. But yet it's the thing that scares us the most. If you've ever tried to gaze into someone's eyes without talking, see how uncomfortable that might make you feel, or vulnerable. But it's what we want, is that connection. And it's beyond a physical connection. It's the connection with the divine. And if we truly are the essence of God walking around in these little skin suits, we can know God through each other, through the relationships that we have with each other. And this is what Shams and Rumi had. And there's a point where Shams was either run off or left. And Rumi was brokenhearted. And then he really started writing some poems about this, about the longing for the beloved, the longing for the connection. And some people say that Shams was killed by Rumi's sons. We don't know really what happened to him, but he just disappeared one day. And so Rumi went to another city to look for Shams, and he had a realization that what he was looking for and what Shams was showing him was really himself, that he was looking for himself. And so his poetry started to shift from like love poems to Shams to love poems to God, to the beloved, the lover and the beloved. So he referred to God as the beloved, but he also referred to God as the friend. So there's a friend that's outside of us and a friend that's within us. And so I mentioned Coleman Barks earlier. He is the premier translator of Rumi poetry from the 3 or 4 different languages that Rumi wrote in into English. And the first time I heard him speak and share Rumi poetry, I almost fell off my horse, because he's from Chattanooga, and that's where I'm from. And so he's like sharing this Rumi poetry in my accent. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. But we're going to let Coleman share with you a little bit this morning about Rumi's idea of the friend.
Rumi says everything is for the beloved. Everything is for the friend. And my understanding of that is that there is a presence that we feel in the beauty that we see outside of us. We feel it in a November sunset. We feel it in a child sleeping, in a child dancing, playing soccer. We feel it in a group of friends making supper on Sunday night. He would say that feeling is a presence that is both outside of us and tending us and inside us. When we feel like the jewel-like quality of our own inner awareness, that also is the friend. And this inner-outer presence is addressed directly in many of Rumi's poems. When he says that wonderful pronoun you, and you don't quite know who it is, it's that presence. When it's cold and raining, he says, you are more beautiful. And the snow brings me even closer to your lips. The inner secret, that which was never born, you are that freshness, and I am with you now. I can't explain the goings or the comings. You enter suddenly, and I am nowhere again, inside the majesty.
It's a presence that's both outside of you, intending you, but it's also a jewel-like quality, a freshness that is what you are. So when Rumi says you, that's what he's referencing. It's not a you that's way out there. It's a presence that's right here with us in this room right now. It's not something that's a fantasy or a fable. It's a presence that's tangible and real, and it's here. It's not anything that we have to try to get. It's always here right now. We just have to open up to it and allow that freshness that you are to be made known in the world. What a beautiful thing. But it means we have to give up everything. It means we have to be willing to die and be resurrected. It means we have to release all of the things that we think are going to make us happy and have one desire, and that's for the beloved. That's for the presence. That's for the friend. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's as close as your own hand. It's part of you. It's what you are. It's spread out upon the earth and you don't even see it. Because we're looking here, looking there, looking on our phone, looking in relationships. We're looking on whatever for something that we think is going to give us that satisfaction, that jewel-like quality. Well, you might get that thing that you want, the job or the person or the car or the house or whatever it is. But have you ever had the experience of you finally get what you think you want that's really going to satisfy you, and then you're looking for something else a few months later? Yeah, because everything is temporary, but that presence, that freshness, it doesn't ever change. It doesn't ever go away. You can't divide it. You can't take anything away from it. This is a really funny joke I love about, if you remember back in the day when they used to have cars that had bench seats. Am I the only one that remembers this? Right, okay. Yeah, like today we all have our own little like spaceship seat that we sit in. But you know, I used to have a car, a big Chevy. It had a big front seat. You could put 4 people up there. Nobody had a seat belt. Kids hopping around in the back, right? And so there's an older couple, and they pull up at a man and woman, been married forever. They pull up at a stoplight, and he's driving, and she's way over here up against the door, looking out the window. And they pulled up beside this young couple, and they're all in love. They're all like up on each other and laughing and smooching and everything. And so the elder woman looks at her husband and says, "Why don't we do that anymore?" And he said, "I'm not the one that moved over." It's the same way with God. God's right here all the time, and we're the ones that are moving over. The only way that we can be separate from the beloved, from the friend, is in our own mind, is if we think we're separate, if we think we're not worthy, if we think we're not deserving. Who am I to be the magnificent presence, the freshness, the jewel-like quality of the divine in the world? Well, who are you not to be? Like, if you don't do it, who's going to do it, right? We're the ones that are waking up to this, so it's our responsibility to be that into the world. Because the more of us that are expressing the presence, the beloved, the friend that are having this experience, this establishment in the presence, the more it shows other people, the more that we become way showers. Hey, look, God's right here all the time. Look, here it is. So I want to close with this poem by Rumi. It's a little long, but I ask you to bear with me. It's one of my favorites. It's called Looking for Your Face. Looking for Your Face. So remember, as I read this, what Coleman Barks just told us about what Rumi says when he uses the pronoun you. From the beginning of my life, I have been... From the beginning of my life, I've been looking for your face. Today I see it. Today I've seen the charm, the beauty, the unfathomable grace of the face that I was looking for. Today I found you, and those that laughed and scorned me yesterday are sorry that they're not looking as I did. I am bewildered by the magnificence of your beauty, and I want to see you with 1,000 eyes. My heart has burned with passion and has searched forever for this wondrous beauty that I now behold. I'm ashamed to call this love human, and I am afraid of God to call it divine. Your fragrant breath, like the morning breeze, has come to the stillness of the garden. You have breathed new life into me. I have become your sunshine and also your shadow. My soul is screaming in ecstasy. Every fiber of my being is in love with you. Your effulgence has lit a fire in my heart, and you have made radiant for me the earth and the sky. My arrow of love has arrived at the target. I am in the house of mercy, and my heart is a place of prayer.